and welcome back to my channel. In this video I just want to talk about a little bit about my feelings around what I perceive to be the replacement of traditional autism or Asperger's with a neurodiversity movement type of autism, which I cannot relate to at all. So I would say, based upon my understanding of, well, put it this, okay, so around the time I got diagnosed autistic, back in the tail end of 2008 and beginning of 2009, I read quite a lot of literature about autism that was written quite some time ago, so sort of like 1980s, 1990s publications by people like Christopher Gilberg, I think, Uta Frith, and some of the main players in the autism field. And I read this stuff, and I could relate to it a lot. It applied to me. This was a stereotypical, traditional portrayal of autism, which I felt was very close to my experience, and made me feel that I belonged. At the time, I understood myself to be very handicapped by my autism, in the sense that I have very little understanding of how to make friends and maintain relationships. I have very rigid routines, but I thought I was one of the more able of a very disabled group. I thought my understanding of autism, admittedly limited at the time because I hadn't actually yet met many autistic people, but from what I'd read and my understanding, was that autism was a serious disability, a very serious disability, and I was disabled. I was coming to terms with the fact that I was very disabled because I had been in denial for a long time about that, very much of our own little world, very cut off from other people. For a long time I was so in my own little world and had so little self-awareness that I didn't even know I had a problem. Other people around me, like my parents, people at school, were very concerned. Particularly, I say school, I mean like primary school particularly. Because I think at primary school, obviously, the teachers spent a lot of time with you, and they were very concerned, right from, reception and earlier, even at nursery school. They were very concerned about my development. I had a sense that other people were concerned about me from a young age, but I was very much in my own little world, and I cut myself off from it. I didn't really, I just got on with life. That was the type of person I was. Just very cut off from other people, very immature, not really aware, not really caring that I was weird, I became more aware I was different at secondary school. I'm not going to go into that now because I've done other videos about when I started to click that I was different. And obviously I stayed in denial for quite some time. But when I came out of that denial and I finally, accepted what my parents had been trying to tell me for years, which is that I had a problem, and as my parents said, it was probably autism because my dad was a teacher and he found out about it in 2000 and thought I probably had it. And obviously then I went for the assessment and got diagnosed, and yes, sure enough, it was autism. So I read these books. And yes, and I could see myself very much portrayed in the classic, stereotypical presentation of Asperger type autism. And I thought every single person with autism was a bit like me, and some people had it even worse than me. That was my understanding. So I thought all autistic people like me would really struggle with friendships. Having relationships, let alone getting married, was kind of not really possible. Apologies to those people watching this who are autistic and married, by the way. This was just my understanding at the time, I have to say, okay? And I do still think that while obviously it is possible to be autistic and to get married, I do still think that people who can do that are still in a minority. But I think the NDM make it out as though they're not in a minority, but that isn't representing the facts. But anyway, so that's what I thought. And I finally felt pretty at home. I had discovered where I fit in. My understanding was that, as I say, was that all autistic people were very severely disabled on the social front. I was disabled, but there were many who were even more severely disabled than me, but crucially, all autistic people are very, very disabled, and I was one of the more able, of a very disabled group of people, and I was still very disabled myself, but at a sort of more able end. That's what I assumed. I fit the stereotype, I fit the traditional view of autism. The way autism was written about before the neurodiversity movement took over, before this stuff about female autism, which I do not fit it, I do not understand female autism. What is female autism? Because seriously, to me, it's kind of just like autism. Yeah, I would quite like to go back actually and reread some of that earlier literature, because it's been over 10 years now since, like 13 years or something, since I last read these books. I would quite like to go back and reread it, just because it might be a comfort to read these books now that the neurodiversity movement has taken over, because it reminds me that actually autism as I have it does exist. People like me do exist. This is real autism, not the autism light that's been taken over by the neurodiversity movement, which I say isn't. Okay, maybe it is, if you want to. Well, I suppose you could say that this is a new type of autism, in big inverted commas, that has been constructed by neurodiversity movement sociologists. So you could say, if you want to call it autism, it is a type of condition that maybe exists and maybe needs to be given a different name. But to me, it's not autism. To me, autism is what was written about in those books by Christopher Gilbert and other people. And that autism is what I have, and people like me have. And this is the people that have been forgotten and pushed out of the neurodiversity movement. So the autism I'm talking about that's been traditionally understood is the following. You have really rigid routines. I have to do things by the clock, okay? I really struggle to deviate from routine. I can sometimes do it. It's not like it's absolutely impossible, don't get me wrong, but in general, my whole life is driven by the clock. There has to be a structure there has to be an order there. Certain things are sacrosanct, like my bedtime. I always go to bed at the same time. Other things I could be a little bit more flexible about, but it still has to follow this very specific, highly structured schedule. So while some things might not be absolutely to the clock, they are still dominated by a certain military kind of timetable, which I can't really deviate too much from, because I need that, because it gives me that sense of order, which I really, really need. I cannot deal with sudden change. I cannot deal with unpredictable shit. I cannot deal with spontaneity. I have to do things my way. I am very much a my way person. This conflicts with other people. If their way conflicts with my way comes first. I'm very, very in my own head. I'm very self-absorbed. I'm very much in my own bubble. That is autism, okay? This is something, it's just the way my brain is. This is autism. So rigid routines. And the other reason why I say I'm pretty traditional and stereotypical in my autism, or you could just say it's just autism, i.e. not NDM autism, the type of autism that it was autism before it got changed by the NDM, is that I've never had a proper friend. Literally, I've never had a proper friend, okay? Actually, I'm going to move over to video number 2 now, because this video might run out of me, so I'm moving over to video number 2 to carry on this little discussion.